back again. We have got some questions rolling in. Feel free to do that again through the Q&A functionality of Zoom, as well as on the Poll Everywhere link that we've had going for the last little while. And with that, let us pick up with our next session, the panel. So what we've decided to do is just have a number of our guests take questions from the audience and just kind of have a round table, about 45 minutes of content there. Let's just check in real quick. Our attendees are our friend from earlier before, Bill Mowle. Are you with us, Bill?
I'm here, Joe. Can you hear
Very
me okay?
much. Yes, and we have Joe Lightfoot. Are you available as well? You're in?
I'm here.
And
How are
Dennis? Dennis Park,
Yep.
are you available?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. Let's just do quick intros for those of you that were not able to attend Bill's session earlier. Bill, could you just introduce yourself briefly?
Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Mowle. I work at Children's Hospital Colorado, and I'm the Director of Financial Systems and Analytics.
Thank you. Joe, can you go next?
Hello all, I'm Joseph Lightfoot from the University of Miami Medical Group down in Miami. The AVP over physician compensation, financial alignment, and special projects, and there's some other values and acronyms in there that I'm sure of.
All right, and Dennis, would you like to go next?
Yes, my name is Dennis Park. I'm the Group Practice Director for the Department of Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston.
Thank you, Dennis. And Joe, I'm gonna let this slide. I was not told there's going to be an extra Joe on the panel today, so I'm going to cut you a break this time, but I'll have a speak with the organizers about adding extra Joes to the agenda.
That's it. That's right.
I'm going to throw a general question out for you, and I'd just like maybe each of you to take it in turn about trends. So what trends have you been seeing emerging now in the healthcare industry during the pandemic, something unforeseen or something that's more pronounced than it was before? I'll just leave it open. Anyone that wants to grab this one can go. Trends in the industry?
Yeah, I'll jump in here and just so I can get to the easy and the obvious one. Certainly in terms of healthcare, just the volumes, we're nowhere near where we were if we look at the same periods in the prior years. I'm sure Dennis, as a colleague of mine, can tell you they're experiencing the same thing over there in Houston. We're just not there. The clinic visits, particularly at the start of, whatever you refer to as that initial surge, just not there. And we're, in different phases trying to pick back up to some semblance of what those volumes used to be. But, in terms of that trend, we saw a large drop, and then we're on the backward recovery period. And then we're trying to understand the shape of that recovery period, what that's going to look like.
Thanks. Bill, Dennis, any input there?
Yeah, this is Dennis. I'd echo what Joe said. Definitely saw an acute drop in volume. We're working our way back up there. But in addition to the volume changes, I'd say adoption of telehealth technology. This coronavirus has kind of boosted our adoption and necessity to implement and expand and provide to all of our specialties. So if there is a silver lining of any of this, it is that we have a much more robust telehealth option for all of our patients.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Any
insights on? Yeah, go ahead.
So this is Bill, and sorry I don't see my video. My camera is down, but apologize for that, but that's okay. Similar things, definitely a lot more telehealth activity coming in, and just interesting, just navigating through some of the IT infrastructure to kind of support that telehealth demand that's out there. So definitely had a lot of telehealth, and then there were some issues with some network type things that came up totally independent of telehealth, but shows like if you're going to do telehealth, that now you do have a lot more dependency on certain other things. So probably some new enhancements, new investments to kind of shore that up. So if you were hesitant to get into it, I think now obviously you're into it and it's here to stay. So
Yeah,
All right, thanks. Any other insights on that? Next question. All right. What are the top areas you expect to invest in for your finance and operations technology? Other areas of investment that are not related to finance and operations, and are these driven / accelerated by COVID-19? So what are you investing in and why? Anyone want that one?
I would say, well, I think, that's a good question. It's a big question, but I think in terms of investment in technologies related to, finance and operations, I think what this experience, what we're experiencing right now is kind of showing us is where maybe there's some opportunities, right? Where we have some gaps, maybe there's some opportunity to enhance the tools available to us, utilizing systems, like Oracle, in order to be able to make decisions real time, and this is a perfect environment that kind of shows you if we're waiting, to pull numbers into a spreadsheet and crunch a lot of data to get to some conclusion, but it takes us a month and a half to derive and get to a data set where we feel comfortable to make a decision. That might be a little late in the game right now, right? We've got to be able to make decisions real time and feel comfortable with the data and what it's telling us today, not, 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. But I think it just kind of augments, maybe some opportunities and kind of points you in the direction where are some areas where we need a little bit more enhancement, a little bit more sophisticated decision support.
Thanks.
I would echo that as well. The obvious, I guess, is going to be a lot more of the telehealth expanding. At Baylor, we have Epic as our EMR of choice here. So definitely looking to see what other tools are accessible that can enhance the service delivery that we're offering. But in terms of decision support tools, certainly being able to swiftly respond and to identify imbalances of supply and demand in different service areas, I think would be exacerbated the need for it, given constraints of resources right now. So that's something that Baylor is already looking into in terms of reporting software. I would expect to see an enhanced focus on that moving forward now.
Great.
yeah, so this is Bill. I would just jump in just a different perspective too, is we're investing in more kind of called employee safety related things. So certainly investing in how we're going to track and monitor employee health and make sure that we've got the screeners in place and technology in place to help either contact trace or something, like just understand where people are in terms of their individual health. So we've seen some innovation on our existing tools. I think what we're probably challenged with is using all the tools that we currently have in new and innovative ways, because there probably isn't a lot of money, extra money to do additional investment outside the immediate needs and response related to COVID.
Thanks. That actually can be a nice transition to another question that we've had from the audience. You mentioned your healthcare workers and kind of changing around priorities and trying to take care of them. Can you speak to how you may have been dealing with psychological effects on the healthcare workers of your organization as we go through this crisis, and how it's affected them, and what you've been doing or ideas for helping them kind of cope with that psychologically, mentally?
Yeah, so I can say that I know here at the university they offer a lot of resources in that regard for the parents who are frontline, as well as the staff who are feeling the strain of being at home with little ones, and without having caregivers or school. So they're really kind of trying to fill both roles at home. So they've offered like sessions around that, how to cope through that, how to manage the demands of your work environment, the business processes that still have to go on, while still being attentive to the needs of your family, because you're basically living in both worlds simultaneously now. You know, as well as other, you know, benefits and virtual talks and, you know, best practice sessions around how, you know, what are some strategies that seem to help others to be successful and to kind of navigate this unknown environment. So there's a lot of resources like that, driven around a lot of like web platforms where you can log in similar to this and talk with experts in those fields. And that's something that I think the university has done really well.
Great, thanks. Anyone else have insights to add to that? We do have a lot of questions, so you don't no need to fill space. We feel good on that one?
We'll grab the next one.
All right. We're going to shift gears a little bit and have to talk about supply chain. So it's been in the news a lot, trying to source PPE, masks, swabs, et cetera, from around the globe, as well as kind of competition between states. So how has your supply chain been impacted? What have you done about that? And what sorts of changes do you see in the future as we're learning our lessons from here?
So one of the actions that I've seen that has changed is the college consistently sending out inventory on hand via daily updates from the command center. That was an area of anxiety, certainly, for employees across campus. And in the absence of data, everyone's mind tends to shift towards worst case scenario. So regular updates disseminated to the employee listserv across the entire institution have become a regular occurrence to reassure providers, staff, what we have on hand and what the current burn rate is, so how long we're going to be good for. And that's been something that was well received.
All right. Any supply chain comments?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Dennis said. I mean, we have much more robust reporting on those hot list items, and just continue to monitor them daily. And yeah, I mean, there's just definitely a lot of concern around PPE management and how we can best conserve, as well as make sure we have the inventory on hand. So several new roles to kind of help manage that flow and get it to the units as well. So lots of change, but I think we went through an initial blip, and I think we're now more operationalizing it now, probably overall. So where there was a whole bunch of more intense need to have more resources to kind of manage it, now we kind of hit our stride, so it's a little less intensive at this point.
All right, thanks. You want the next? All right, let's talk about, let's talk about physician compensation. So obviously there's a lot of impact going on to, as we were saying, elective procedures. There's a lot of doctors that are getting an awful lot of work right now if they're related to COVID, emergency room, ICU, that sort of thing. And a lot that are not. If they're doing knee replacements and things like that, they're probably not so busy. How are you managing issues with physician compensation at this time? What changes, and do you see these changes extending into the future?
Yeah, so again, it's a good question. It's a big question, and I think at least I could say, you know, from what I've seen in conversations with our colleagues, is that it largely depends. And there's a lot of variable that go into how you're approaching that. Even within an organization, within a single health system, you may have physicians that are, you know, the way their compensation is structured varies greatly. You could have some that are on more just traditional on a fixed, you know, compensation structure. You can have others that have an incentive component, a bonus of some type, or an incentive. And then you have others that truly live in a risk-based world where, you know, performance determines whether, you know, kind of determines their baseline at some future point, you know, or a draw type model. So, you know, and knowing that there's those differences in the way that the physicians are compensated, what their incentive structures are, you kind of have to approach it from the standpoint that, you know, there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all approach to it. You've got to decide, you know, how are you going to treat each tranche in terms of how those physicians are compensated and incentivized currently. And then within that, there's different levels of stratification between frontline providers and faculty and physicians versus the non-frontline. The frontline, it may be a little more clear what they're doing right now. And, because of the fact that it is frontline, it's very apparent. And then there's an assignment there. Whereas with the non-frontline who may not have the volumes there, and, as they transition to telehealth, do they have the volumes? Are we able to account for their time with that telehealth work, or is there some ability to reassign or kind of redeploy them? Because all those things ultimately determine how you'd want to approach their compensation, whether it be for the next 3 months, the next 6 months, what have you, depending on exactly how this all shakes out.
For the group practice here, the majority of our faculty, at least in medicine, are on a kind of a risk-based model, like Joe was mentioning. There's a draw, and the dean sent out a letter a couple of months ago when this kind of began to let everyone know that institution was making a commitment for the immediate future, hoping to last as long as possible, not to make the faculty, I guess, bear the brunt of something that's out of their hands in terms of volume, if there's no volume to be produced. So the college has taken a year-to-date monthly average for the faculty, and if they have done in excess of that in these most recent months, they're credited for whatever kind of models out more favorably for them. So if your monthly average year-to-date is greater than what you've actually produced because you're in an area that is not front-facing, for example, they've been credited for their historical average. So it's the institution's way of demonstrating that they're attempting to keep the clinical faculty's compensation whole for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. How agile were you, and like what sort of ability did you have to adjust your models for compensation as well as other reforecasting efforts when this unexpected event occurred? What lessons did you learn about the need to have these abilities to agilely reforecast, reimagine what the future is going to look like? And were you successful at your organization in doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having access to the Oracle EPM is huge. We're managing 1,500 to 2,000 faculty, depending on the mission. So having a system like that available to us where we can communicate real time, get information, reconcile with the departments, and then ultimately be able to roll up into whatever conclusion we're trying to determine or see whatever results we're trying to see. Obviously that helps, it makes it, and it's been largely a big factor in us being able to get real-time results back to leadership so that they can make real-time decisions around this, basically able to say, hey, here's where it is. If we play through these different sensitivities and these different scenarios, this is our risk, but you can't do that real time if you're working with static models and shadow models. So, having access to the EPM has been a huge benefit in terms of our ability to plan and support the decisions of leadership.
Others, how did you remodel and reforecast, and how well did that go for you?
I would say we're on the opposite end of the spectrum compared to what Joe was mentioning. We were very manually digging through multiple databases, dumping that data into one location to model out. So, for example, for our faculty in medicine, looking at historical gross collection rate across different service areas, comparing that against the visit data that we see in Epic for what activity are we generating right now to try to project what revenues are going to be moving forward. Not the most rapid ability, lots of manual time invested to review all the filters and ensuring that assumptions are sound. So we're moving a little bit more slowly, but pushing forward.
Yeah, and I think in the example that Dennis is giving there, where he's talking about he's got a cohort of faculty that fall under a risk-based model. If you're going to offer something like what he's mentioning there, where there's going to be some type of guarantee either in the form of monetary or some type of like a bridge RVU that you're going to offer them to make up for the fact that there's a certain amount of other RVUs that are missing, you have to have good data. What is that? Are we expecting our historical productivity to, we're expecting to fall off by 15%, 20%, whatever that is. So one, you need good data real time, and then you need to actually build out those models so you can really understand if we guarantee 20% of, a 20% floor on their historical, what does that calculate out to in terms of the cost to us if our model holds true, and then every other iteration in between 20% and zero, of course.
Yeah, I think I would add on my side just the ability to use the tools that we talked about earlier today. It's a great foundation, but I think what we still struggle with is the adjustments to growth rates and how you not, what's your bias that you're entering into as you try to forecast certain rates, and what assumptions do you use that drive your forecast. So the technology's there. We can quickly process through the data. And the question is, as you're making those judgment calls, what are those based on, and how do you kind of get a good range going forward?
Thank you. We have a follow-up for Dennis. As you were describing your difficulties, what do you feel is the main gap that you've identified? Is it tool-based, or is it more integration? Because I know that you mentioned kind of manually digging through your data sources. If you had improved integrations from Epic, for example, is that the thing you're going to pursue coming out of this, or is it tool-based?
I believe it's going to be integration. I think that the tool-based options on campus are sufficient if you know what data lives in which source and which one is, this source of truth, depending on the topic at hand. But being able to dump that data into an area that you can manipulate and express metrics against each other is something that is very, very burdensome, time-consuming. So the integration would be my answer for what would be most beneficial moving forward, to give managers a little bit more time for decision making rather than double checking the digits to make sure that we're using accurate projections.
Excellent, thank you. Another slight change of gears here. I'm going to ask you to put your fortune-telling hats on, and we'll see how you can be little Creskins here for us. A number of people are asking if you have any insights into the process of possibly getting a vaccine faster than we're used to doing. Do you think that we are close? Have you heard anything about that? In addition to that, let's see, any public education programs you think that you'll need to do to help people become comfortable with it? And as a follow-up question of my own, how do we prevent Bill Gates from chipping us all and controlling us with 5G? You only have to answer that one if you have time. Let's just talk about the vaccine. How will that impact the industry financially, as well as for the other subjects that we've been talking about?
So unfortunately, I'm sorry there. That one's a little bit, I hear all the same updates and the same, truths and rumors that exist that everybody else hears. So I wouldn't have anything that I can offer in terms of where we are at the stages of therapy that's going to be a viable option that we can roll out operationally anytime soon, or let alone a vaccine. I was hoping somebody else on this line may have some information.
Yeah, I think from our children's perspective, if I can jump in, maybe one of the concerns we have, which isn't probably getting a lot of messaging right now, is as a children's healthcare organization, we do a lot with vaccine education, and compliance with vaccines continues to be something that we advocate for. It'll be interesting to see, even if we do have a vaccine, obviously there'll be a very popular item to get, although there will be probably a set of the population who will resist, like you had said, Joe, about what does it mean? Is it something different? And not trust the vaccine. So, the population may not fully get the vaccine for different reasons. But I do think if you take a step back technology-wise, there's a great opportunity to innovate and figure out how you would distribute something globally as it becomes available in the most efficient way possible. Like what logistics do we have in place today that would help support, and then how do you prioritize? These are all fantastic questions for people to start to think about as the vaccine's being thought through and created, because once it's there, hopefully we'll have a method to distribute it quickly and effectively.
Thanks.
At the beginning of that question, you asked for a timeline, and I'm going to respond cautiously. From what I've read and looked at, vaccines take a good bit of time, some up to 4 years to make. So if there were to be something very optimistic that happens next year, that would be very, very, very impressive to everyone involved. But as far as our role as an admin, not a virologist or anything, I would echo what Bill's saying, enhancing supply chain. Once it's available, how can we educate the masses at scale rapidly, and how do we deliver it in an efficient manner?
Thanks. Just a quick heads up to our audience out there. We are not running out of questions just yet, but don't be shy about sending them in, because we're running about on pace now. So if you got a great question out there, go ahead and submit it, and I'll get it to the panel. And I'll continue on the sort of fortune telling angle here. We also have folks asking about, well, they're kind of focusing on a second wave of COVID infection. So let me just generalize that a little bit. Can you kind of talk about the difficulties you may have been having modeling behavior, or I'm trying to anticipate volume loads based on the changing landscape of state by state orders, kind of as we're going in and out of lockdown in different parts of the country? How has that affected your ability to allocate resources? And are you currently modeling a second wave, a second spike?
I would say absolutely. I think most large organizations I've spoken to speak to the fact that we're all kind of planning for that second surge. The timing of that second surge and exactly the scale of that surge, will it look like what we saw the first time around? Will it be something else? Is the part that's difficult to kind of measure. So I think everybody in general, the common sense thing to do is to kind of plan for the worst, right? And assume whatever you saw the first time around is what you're going to see this time around. So if it impacted you by X millions, kind of plan and allocate resources and save resources and hold on to cash accordingly, because more likely than not, it may look like that. And if it doesn't, and you're pleasantly surprised, the better for your organization. But I think that's kind of the going thought right now, is that there will be a second wave, and we should plan for it to look similar to the first in terms of magnitude. The timing is where there's some debate about whether that will happen sooner as we start to open up the states, or would it happen maybe more in conjunction with like the flu season, which would be a terrible scenario, of course, on top of everything else.
So I'll just put my 2 cents in. So this is me just talking, personally, not for the organization, but we're definitely seeing that. There's definitely benefits to the social distancing that we're having right now. And one of the things we're trying to predict is usually we have a seasonal flu respiratory season, which usually hits first quarter of the year. With so much social distancing and things like that, we're seeing, like, how do we predict the benefits, quite honestly, of all the education around hand washing, everything we should have been doing all the time. Now we're actually seeing the benefits of, in a sense, slowing not just COVID-19, but other disease spread. So that's a positive. I think what'll be interesting to see is how we're, I think, in this model of sustaining right now, where we went through what was a quick surge in March, where things started to go up and everything shut down. From my perspective, what I would say is now that things are opening up, we really wonder, like, well, would we ever shut things back down? And then what would be the triggering point that would start to elevate to a surge? Would we really get to a surge, or would we simply just start to see growth in infection and then how we respond? Because I think we had a quick response last time. It's probably going to be a slower rise. I don't know if we'll see a spike. But that's just my interpretation and my view, but interested to hear what other people have to say.
So I think all the initial projections, are projecting troughs and then maybe a second peak. We haven't really had that here in Houston. Within the last 7 days, our current caseload across the medical center has exceeded what we did in April, and that was when we had our first kind of acute ramp up. So I think everyone's kind of waiting to see, is it going to continue? Have we reached the second peak yet, or is it going to continue to kind of slowly incline? But again, the timing of that, uncertain. I think what we're focusing on is ensuring that our surge planning maintains and is updated. We continue to communicate to faculty of where backups are, what type of wards in the hospital are going to create as extra COVID wards if we get to that point. But the timeline as uncertain as the vaccine.
Great, thanks. I think you can hear, Joe, in there that, just the slight nuances and variances in terms of where we, each of the groups are and what the expectations are. That makes it difficult to kind of plan accordingly. Bill made a really good point there. There may be some other upside components to this, and we're all kind of focused more on the downside to it. But in terms of modeling and all that and exactly knowing when to account for all that and when that's all going to hit is just that's a big challenge right now to get right.
Thanks. I think we can get a little bit more into y'all's area of specialty now and kind of get out of the clinical fortune telling, but still a little bit of fortune telling on just the impact of, let's say, the industry as a whole on M&A. I know I've seen a lot of talk in other industries about companies that have weathered this crisis really well be poised to kind of gobble up competitors. We know that there's been some joint ventures and mergers that have been canceled in the healthcare industry, up to now. Where do you see the financial world? Do you see an enhanced M&A environment coming up into the future? Or do you feel like maybe that's going to be on hold for a while? Any talk about M&A these days? That means mergers and acquisitions, just real quick.
For our department, I would say the closest that I come to any discussions like that, being at the department, not the college level, would be expansion of services regionally. And so there are opportunities for us to partner alongside our existing joint venture partner to expand services to reach a greater area. But for those discussions, we're still assessing existing demand to make sure that it's worth it to incur additional expense for allocating additional staff throughout the greater Houston area. So it's not the same as a merger and acquisition, but in terms of increasing overhead intentionally, we are cautiously reviewing data to see if that's something that is sustainable.
Yeah, any thoughts?
I don't have, again, this is still falls under the crystal ball for me. I don't have information, but I think, Joe, what you're describing there makes perfect sense if you have organizations that aren't able to weather the storm because they're not in a cash position to do so. Those patients are still going to need care at some point. There's still going to be procedures to be done. There's still going to be inpatient volume there. So if you have an organization that is able to get through this, wherever this is and however long this is, that does make sense, and that would kind of speak to being some opportunity for those organizations. So I kind of go along with you there and expect that you would see some of that type of activity in the future, right? Is those organizations that fare through it well and, maybe identify those opportunities.
I sort of anticipate that could lead to, an improvement overall in the American healthcare system if some of these organizations were not prepared or caught flat-footed or performed poorly through this, that those more efficient, more modern organizations, if they wind up taking those over, it kind of sounds like it could be a good idea for all of us.
Yeah, and again, this isn't speaking to any particular organizations. It's certainly not speaking to mine in any way, but that some organizations that get through this may not necessarily get through because they were more efficient or more strategic in how they approached it. It largely could just be in the cash position that they were in going into this, being able to absorb the losses or projected losses as a result of what they're experiencing now. But there could be the others as well, the others who are able to manage through this, figure out a way to get telehealth integrated operationally, and actually be able to realize those volumes to offset the continuing expenses.
Excellent point. Thank you. Any other thoughts on that? I've got a little bit of another gear shift here. If we want to move on from that topic, we good? All right. In terms of as you remodel and try to reset your assumptions in your models and try to reach consensus on what the new numbers are going to be, what are the challenges that you've run into getting buy-in from the various departments, especially out in operations, on what your new assumptions are and your projections for the future? Has that been a challenge? Have organizations come together to try and figure out how to remodel and do the projections?
Yeah, I can probably speak to that. This is Bill. I think everybody comes together and comes through different scenarios. I think then you start to introduce bias in terms of how much enthusiasm one department might have and whether they can truly achieve. And so putting some conservatism behind those numbers and how much probably creates some of the variation, I guess, in terms of where we're going. But again, monitoring your actuals against that forecast is helping us understand where we're at today versus where we were, even where we thought we were going to be a couple weeks ago, and then building in those new assumptions in, and then just getting more and more communication out and seeing what upstream is happening, and then potentially bringing that into some of our downstream services. So I think we're very collaborative about it, and I think a lot of people have different views, but how do you balance enthusiasm against maybe a little bit more conservative approach? And so that's where we're walking through it.
Let's say to the tune of forecasting, during normal times, our staffing ratios, for example, for the ambulatory mission, as long as they're within industry standard, we would normally replace vacancies without a significant amount of scrutiny. But for the time being, we are continuing, again, like Bill just mentioned, monitoring actuals to see if the pent-up demand is actually converting into billable activity. And if not, then do we need to replace all of the existing vacancies right now? Or do we need to wait and see what happens with a second wave, see what when patients will feel much more comfortable coming in for procedures or any type of clinical service?
Kind of learning as we go.
Go ahead.
No, that's all. I just kind of, it sounds like we're all saying we're kind of learning as we go here, right? This is a new world, and there's little historical precedent to really bounce this off of.
Agree. Here's one. I'd like to offer you an opportunity. We have representatives of Oracle on the line who are, providing us these tools, healthcare specialized as well as general EPM, ERP. Is there anything that you would like to ask of Oracle to help you deal with situations like this going forward, whether it is tool-based, process-wise, or any other insights or requests you might make of Oracle directly? Curveball?
Definitely curveball. I mean, I don't know that I have any specific questions other than I think kind of like to the point that I made a little bit earlier on. you know, having good tools to help us kind of understand where we are, help give us data that we can trust, and being able to manipulate different scenarios and sensitivities is crucial for us right now, because in healthcare, there's just so many variables. You know, Bill's mentioned variables, you know, I'm not even thinking of. I'm focusing more so on the downside impact. And Dennis is looking at it from, you know, what are we trying to make up for in terms of lost volumes and lost revenues? You know, there's a lot of different variables in there. So, you know, having sophisticated tools that kind of understand and feel like healthcare would just be, you know, I mean, that's a pie in the sky, but if you had something that can capture all of this and help us to actually model through those scenarios, that would be, you know, a huge game changer, right?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a stab at it as well. And I think been a long-term customer of the solutions, especially around Essbase. And I think there's products that Oracle produces that are different, unique, and very powerful. So helping to just really develop those core competencies would be essential. I think some of the things where we're expanding into some of the analytics cloud, I mean, there's definitely a lot of competition on the analytics side from other vendors and some of those tools. Be great to see something that's just completely different in the market be developed by Oracle. That would be, again, there's been a lot of work, I think, to make it much more end-user friendly. I think, which is a bit of a spin, but a bit of a reach for Oracle. But if there would be continuous more education around how to leverage analytics into the day-to-day consumer would really help, I think. Educate, I guess, is kind of maybe the ask is more and more tools keep coming out, but how can you leverage those tools to actually generate action based on the insight that you're seeing? So I think that's one of the gaps we struggle with. Great products, great opportunity. Just, you know, how can we improve the core and then continue to educate and expand so we can really see those results?
Can I have us move on, Dennis? All right.
I'll give you a quick shot at it.
All right. Thanks.
For myself, looking more at the volume, looking at the day-to-day activity that we have in all the different service areas, something that I cannot easily do right now is to extract patient demographic data from Epic and correlate that against billing data. So I would say, even from things like radius from the med center, is there a certain correlation between distance of travel into any of our different locations and no-show rate? So again, that's kind of an example of multiple databases on campus that house different information for us. And so the integration of something as finite as that would be a telling metric, I think, that we could find interesting deductions from.
Great, thanks. And I think I'll pick this next set of questions. We've had a bit of interest in beyond budgeting, so I'm not sure if this panel here has expertise there. I have been doing a fair amount of consulting in my strategic assessment work in recent months around beyond budgeting, particularly in healthcare. So I'm wondering, as well as some of our audience, if you have thoughts about how beyond budgeting concepts can help you, work through a situation such as this, if you're more working on like target-based and KPI-based management of things that you can control versus just monetary targets. Are you using any beyond budget concepts, or if not, do you anticipate maybe using them more in the future? Or is this a little bit out of your area? It's a little specialized, but it's kind of a pet topic of mine. I do like to talk about it.
So Joe, certainly, this is Bill. We talked about it earlier today about how we are leveraging beyond budgeting concepts throughout our whole forecasting process now. So we've moved to it. It's working well. It's a bit of a shift, or especially as we get new leaders who come in and ask for what their budget is, or how much money can I spend, to shift to more, again, the driver-based models that we have set up, and seeing how we're doing to those targets, and monitor those targets more aggressively now, especially now that we have more and more tools in place to see not just month-end performance, but weekly and daily performance against those targets and those goals. So we've had a lot of success, but definitely took some change management to kind of see how we could kind of keep resources generally available for everybody, instead of locking them up in traditional like allocations and this is my money, this is your money, and then having to give that up, especially in like COVID response. It would be you might be defunding one department versus another, and you're moving things around. It's a lot of administrative burden and tension that has really been freed up by moving to beyond budgeting, where you simply have your core revenue, core expenses, and you look at how you're doing on your run rate, and then pretty much move forward. So that's my thoughts. We can keep going if you'd like.
We'll talk about beyond budgeting over drinks sometime, Bill. Joe, Dennis, any insights on the subject of beyond budgeting?
Absolutely. So I think what you're talking about is something I'd actually like a little bit more. So I'm going to go on the other side and being the ones that ask questions, Joe. So you're going to have to give me more information afterwards on, your experiences. I want to be part of that, that drink as well, because
all right,
what you're describing there is what all organizations want to get to. We live in this, this antiquated approach where we rely on static budgets. Some have flex budgets, but largely it is, here's my piece of the pie that I have to live with for the next, 12 months or so. And is that really the best way to approach resource allocation? So I think moving towards KPIs and other metrics to actually drive behaviors and drive, and monitor performance is where we all want to get to, but it's kind of crossing that chasm. How do you go from, I think we all get it, but how do you do that? And so that'd be something I would definitely like to see and be a part of, because I've worked for a few academic institutions, and I say we all, for the most part, largely follow the traditional budgeting system, where you base it off of historical with some projections for the future, and you live within that budget for the next 12 months.
Dennis, you lit up green here. Were you going to say something?
I think that was my fan in my room.
All right. I'll give you a little something here to you. This is where I got started. I don't know if you might be able to see that. Implementing Beyond Budgeting. It's by Bjarte Bogsnes. It's a Scandinavian name, but you can see all my bookmarks and things in here. That's one place where I got started learning about beyond budgeting. So that's a good place to learn about it. One of the key ideas is you can think about an intersection with, if there's a street light there, that's kind of the budgeting idea, where no one really has to think about anything. The light tells them what to do, what they, when to go, when not to go. If you compare that to the roundabouts that they have all over Europe, people are really engaged, and they're using their minds, and they're looking at what's going on around them as they go through that roundabout. And they can, make smart decisions about what to do, when to proceed, how fast to go. And that's a great analogy that they use throughout that book, where budgets just kind of keep everybody on rails, and nobody's really applying their skills and their minds to what they're doing, say running a department. Whereas if we give people more flexibility and more control over what they're doing, then they'll do a better job, and everything works more current, more efficiently. So we do have a couple more questions. I'm going to apologize for the couple of questions that we weren't able to get to. I want to let y'all have 10 minutes going into the next session, and then we're going to have, following the break at 3:30 Central Time, real-time analytics and narrative reporting for healthcare, presented by Opal Alapat of NRL. And with that, I will do my audience proxy round of applause for our panel.